Hello friends, I welcome you all to this session on C++ programming. So in the previous lecture, we developed a class kinematics, and we have learned that how to create data members and why to keep data members as private, and how to create member functions, and they should be kept as public. And at the same time, we have also seen that we cannot access directly the data members from the main because they are all private by default. So we have to create one function for initializing the data members, and the function was this set data. Now, is this the elegant way of initializing the uh, member functions? So the answer is no, this is not a very elegant way. The elegant way is the use of constructors. So in this particular lecture, I will be discussing about the constructors. So what are constructors? Constructors are basically special functions uh, in the class itself. And let's say today what we will do is we will first try to make the same kinematics class using constructor, and then we will be making one more program for finding out, or for we will be making one program for basically what we call it complex number. Now, the constructor, they are basically used to initialize the data members. So let's say I am having a class named as let's say ABC. So this is the name of that particular class, and this is having some data member, let's say A, B, and C. So these are data members. A, B, and C are data members. So by default they are uh, private. Okay. Now what I'll do is I will try to create one constructor. So first thing first, all the member functions should be kept as public. Okay. Then colon. Now the constructor, the name constructor suggests that it is constructing something. So it is doing what? It is constructing the object of the class. So what we do is we write the name of the function as such, and then parenthesis. Inside the parenthesis, if you are not passing any argument, so that means this is by default, this is not taking any argument, and then the constructor name is same as that of class but without any return type. Then you have to set some value for A. Let's say I am setting 1, for B also I am setting 1, for C also I am setting 1. So this is what? This is basically the constructor which comes into picture the moment object of this class ABC, let's say A, is created. The moment this is created, so what will happen in the memory, you will be having A, B, and C. So the moment you do this, you write this inside the main, so A will be getting 1, B will be getting 1, and C will be getting 1. So they will be pre-initialized using this default constructor. This is called as default constructor because it is not accepting any argument whatsoever has been given by default in the class itself. So that particular is being created. That is what we call as default constructor. Now, do we always have to stick with default constructor? What if the user want to supply the argument itself? So there is also the possibility of it, and that is done using parametrized constructors. So inside any function, what are parameters? Parameters are basically what the function accepts as input. So if I say int x, int y, and int z, these three parameters this particular function ABC require, and here a x I am transferring to a, y I am transferring to b, and z I am transferring to c. So what will happen if I am creating an object like this without any argument, without anything? So this particular default constructor will be called. Whereas if I create an object ABC, let's say B, with 2, 5 and 7, now as during compile time, compiler sees this, and the moment compiler looks this, so it will be not seeing this particular one, as this doesn't have any argument. It will be searching for that particular constructor which is having some argument, and that is the one. So in this way, the parameterized constructor is called and it is constructed. So the purpose of constructor is simply to initialize the data members. So the first way is by default, and the second one is using a parameterized constructor. There is another way also, that is called as copy constructor, but we will be looking at it in later videos. But right now we will be sticking to these two. So let us jump to the file itself. Now here, the name of that particular class is kinematics. So what we'll do is we'll not be writing this, or let's say it is written, doesn't matter, keep it. So what we'll be doing is we will be creating a constructor which doesn't have any arguments, and then simply this u, a and t, I am passing here u as 1, a as let's say 1, or doesn't matter, t also let's say 1. So by default it is, if the moment the object is created, u will become 1, a will become 1 and t will become 1. So this is what we call as a parameterized constructor, sorry, a default constructor. Now if I want, let us see that how this thing works, and for that we have to create one function which can display u, a and t. So let's say this, we are creating one function known as void get data, sorry, or get data. So what I will be getting, I will simply be getting u as u, and then let us copy this part. Oops, what has happened? Control Z, I have to copy it. Okay, then this is a, okay, and then this is going to be t and L. That's it. Now this is default constructor. So the values of u, a and t by default should become 1, 1, 1 at the moment the object is created. So let us do it. So here is my object, and let us get rid of these for the time being. So what I'll say, I'll simply say k1 dot get data, it is the one, and if I run this now, I will be able to see that u is 1, a is 1 and t is 1. So it is better to give some space there. So here I'll do it. So now if I run it, so you can say u is 1, a is 1, t is 1. Why? Because the moment this control comes here, kinematics k1, so this object, the moment it gets created, this will be created with these values. Okay, so this you should understand. And if we don't write this constructor, then system also by default provides us the constructor. So let us see what system has given to us. So if I run it now, no constructor is there. So if I run it now, you can see that system has given us 0, 0, 0 as by default. So there is no point of writing a program in which by default values are there. So your by default should be there. Programmers by default value should be there. Okay. Now let us say I am interested in writing one more constructor, but this time the constructor should be taking the values given by the user, not the default value which are present in the class itself. So what I'll say, this is what, this is float. Okay. So float float x, float y, float z, and this is x, this is y, and this is z. That's it. So simple. So these are taking some parameters for the data member. So that's why it This is called as parameterized constructor. So how to create an object for this? It is very simple. What you can say, kinematics, let's say K2, and here I will be supplying the parameters. So let's say the first parameter is initial velocity, let's say it is 2 meter per second. Okay. Then the acceleration, let's say it is 12 meter per second square, and then finally the temperature. If I am not wrong, the final value is temperature. Let's say I am interested in finding out the distance after 5 seconds. So that is what my constructor, the object will look like. That is how it is. And if you want to see the object now, what is there in the data members, so that is what. So now for this K2 you are having US2, AS12 and TS15. So in this way you can create the objects with the help of constructors, and you should do it. You should write your constructors. Okay, so that's all. It's very simple thing, and that's it. Rest is very easy. You can call this display function to get the displacement for either K1 object or K2 object, doesn't matter. Now let us try to do what? Let us try to write a class for complex, which will be doing what? Which will be taking inputs as the real and complex. So it must be having two data members, real and complex, and the class should be capable enough to display the complex number, to do the addition of two complex number, do the subtraction of two complex number, and so on. So let us create a class for complex number. So if I am having a complex number, as we have done in case of structures also, so complex is having two things. First is real and the second one is imaginary, and that is how we write it: real plus imaginary I. Okay, so let us write a class for this. So let us remove everything from here and this also. Now let us write a class. Class comp is the, let's say, the class name. Comp means complex, and then inside we are having private data members, that is real and imaginary. These two are data members. Then I should have public functions. So let us write first. First, what I have to write? I have to write the constructor for it. So the constructor is having the same name as that of the class. It doesn't have any return type. Remember this. So this is a default constructor which I am writing. So this real I am assigning, let's say 1, and imaginary is also, let's say 1. Now the time has come for parameterized constructor. So the parameterized constructor means it must be accepting two parameters because there are two data members. So float, let's say a r, and float I for imaginary. So this will take r and this will take imaginary I. Now the next thing is to write a function which will return a complex number, which will return basically the addition of two complex numbers, and addition means again it has to be a complex one. So this thing I have already discussed with you in case of structures. So let us do it again. So let us say add is that particular function which will be taking one complex number, let's say x, okay, and then it will be doing what? The same object will be taking another object, and the same object means this object, this one is taking another object x, and it is adding real to real, complex to complex. That's it, imaginary to imaginary. So for that I require one intermediate variable t. So the real part of that will be nothing but the real, that is the one for the complex number for which I am doing, plus the real part of this complex number which I am taking as an argument. Likewise, t dot imaginary will be imaginary plus x dot imaginary. And once this has been done, so I have to close this statement. Once this has been done, then you simply have to return this t. But what is t? T is a complex number, so the return type should be comp. That's it, addition. In the similar way, you can write for the subtraction also. Let us name it as sub, and this will be just changed from plus to minus. Once this has been done, then I should have one function to display the complex number. Okay, so let's say void display, disp, let's say, and display this complex number, the one which I am acting, or one which I am standing right now in. So doesn't require any argument. So see out simply real, and then plus, and then imaginary, and then close the bracket and write I, and then endl. Done. We have created a class for the complex number which is taking which is having two data members, that is real and imaginary, and functions like default constructor, as this doesn't have any argument, then parameterized constructor having parameters or argument, then a function for adding two complex numbers, a function for subtracting two complex number, and finally a function which will display the complex number. So let us create one instance or the object of this complex, comp. So let's say it is C1. Now, what this C1 is, basically the moment I run it, so what will happen? An object of class comp will be created having default values, that is 1 and 1. So if you want to see it, you can see using C1 dot display. That's it. So if you run this, you will be able to see that the first complex number is 1 plus 1, means real is 1, imaginary is 1. So 1 plus I. 1I means I. So that is the use of your default constructor. So let us do what? Let us make one parameterized constructor. So let us copy this, and let's say C2 is my second complex number, and let us display it. But C2 is having some parameters, let's say 2 and 4. So now this, let's say 2.1 and 4.2, let's say. So this is doing what? This is creating one complex object having these parameters. So what will happen? This particular constructor will be called as it is having parameters. So let us see how this happens. So if you run it, you can see the first one is default constructor, so default values are coming. Second one is using parameterized constructor, so parameterized values, that means the values which you have passed will be creating, or will be used to create the complex number. Now let us say comp and C3. Now what is this C3? C3 is again by default it is what, 1 1, and I am also creating C4. C3 let's say is for addition, and C4 is let's say for subtraction. So now C3 will be what? C3 will be nothing but C1 dot add C2. So what I am doing here, I am taking C1. C1 is having this function add. So this is requiring another complex number. So I am transferring it, and internally it is adding it. How that is done? That is done using this. Now you can see there is one more very beautiful thing about this. When we talk of classes or object oriented programming, so you have seen encapsulation, because data, this and member functions are clubbed inside one. So this is encapsulation. But once you are using these functions, you are using them as if, or anyone use, so he will use it as if he don't know what is happening inside, but what he knows is if I do this, I am getting some answer. So if I don't know what is happening inside, so that is what? That is abstraction. Whatsoever is happening inside, I should get the correct answer. That is what the abstraction is. So C3 will be C1 dot add C2, means this C1 will take C2 inside this add function and add it, and then return a complex number which will be transferred to C3, and C3 itself is a complex number. Similarly, you can do subtraction. So I am storing the values in C4. So C4 will be subtraction, sorry, it is C1 only. So I am doing subtraction. Now, once this has been done, I can call the function display for displaying the C3, that is the result of addition, as well as C4 dot and display, and that's it. So if you run this program, you will be seeing that this is my first complex number C1, this is my second complex number C2, and C3 is basically taking up the addition rate. So it is 2.1 plus 1 3.1, 4.2 plus 1 5.2. Similarly, the subtraction. So this will be what, doing what, C1 minus C2. So this is C1 minus C2, that is 1 minus 2.1 will be minus 1.1, 1 minus 4.2 will be minus 3.2, and that is what it has done. Similarly, you can do what, right now you have done what, C1 plus C2, you can also do C2 plus C1, that is C2 is also having this add function, and you can also do subtraction, C2 minus C1. So values will be now positive because we have changed. Previously you were doing C1 minus C2, but right now you are doing C2 minus C1. So if you do this, you will be getting these results. So friends, in this way you can create the classes having constructors. Okay, and that's it. It is so simple. Now there is one problem with this, because what we know, what we do is we have written dot add something, but in principle what we more comprehend or understand is C1 plus C2, C1 minus C2, C1 C2 minus C1, and so on. This is what we understand more. So that is what we call as overloading. So if I write like this, because addition, subtraction, multiplication, they all are defined where they all are defined for integer, float, and so on. But we are defining our own classes. So this complex is, this COMP is not there inbuilt. So I have defined. So as I have defined it, so I should have my own method for handling them, and for that right now I have used add and subtract, but in the future videos I'll show you that how to overload those addition and subtractions so that the final out so in the main I can simply say C2 plus C1 or C1 plus C2 or C2 minus C1 or C1 minus C2, so that it becomes more elegant, and that is done with the help of operator overloading, because we are doing what, we are overloading the addition, subtraction, and multiplication operators. So in this lecture, I hope you now have got the clear idea of how to write constructors, that is default constructor and parametrized constructor. So there is one more constructor known as a copy constructor. That means it is taking the copy of already existing object and then creating the new. So we'll be seeing it in some later videos. So thank you very much for watching it. Take care.